Hello, everybody. Good morning or good evening. Hello, all over the globe, dear participants of our webinar. Welcome to the second webinar in a series of 3 Library Design Matters organized by the Library Buildings and Equipment section of IFLA. My name is Klaus Werner. I'm based here in Berlin, Germany, and together with my dear colleague Karen Latimer from the UK, we will be your hosts of this webinar today. Before we start, just let me say some technical hints. This webinar will be recorded and will be uploaded on YouTube in a couple of days. For those whose first language is not English, it might be helpful to use the live transcript. That means English subtitles. But I have to admit that sometimes these subtitles are a little bit funny. But anyway, you may find the button for these subtitles in the Zoom menu at the bottom of your screen. Dear attendees, during the webinar, please feel free to use the chat for any questions or comments. Karen Latimer will follow the chat and will summarize your questions and address the questions to our 2 presenters after their talk in the end of the webinar. Our topic today is about 2 new library projects and a special aspect of library design. It is about outdoor spaces as key assets for libraries. And if the pandemic has an impact on library space, the focus on outdoor spaces might be one of these impacts. Today, we have 2 architects as panelists, both based in Berlin. Stefan Schütz from GMP Architects will present a project of a renovation and update of the Berlin State Library, a huge building from the 1970s. And afterwards, Marina Stankovic from Stankovic Architects will talk about her project, a new university library on a brand new campus in Laos in Southeast Asia. Well, let us start. Let us begin with Stefan. The stage is yours, Stefan.
Yeah, Klaus, thank you very much for the invitation. I would like to share my screen first. Just one moment. It should be here, and I hope this works well. Please tell me, is that visible for everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much once again for the invitation to this wonderful webinar. Library Design Matters. What a wonderful title. And this is really true, especially in a time where we almost sit alone, like today at home, and looking forward to get back to public spaces like libraries. I would like to talk about this building. You mentioned that before. The Berlin State Library opened in 1978 in the western part of the city where I live, where Klaus and Marina live. But before I explain about our project, I would like to briefly introduce our architectural practice, very briefly. Our office was founded 50 years ago. We work worldwide with over 500 architects from 50 different nations. And here are some of our projects you may know. The very first one was the Berlin Tegel Airport. Once you arrived in Berlin, you may arrive in this airport. And this airport is substituted some months ago by a new capital airport, which is again a design of our office. And we do libraries, very small ones, like this private library in Hamburg, but also large-scale libraries like this one, an archive and a library in very near to Beijing in China. And this is a quite interesting one. It's a library which is included and integrated in a bigger building coming from the 60s next to a concert hall, exhibition spaces, and restaurants, a hybrid building in the city of Dresden. But let's come back to the building I want to talk about, the Berlin State Library. Here we see the architect of the building during the ceremony of the foundation stone laying in 1967. His name is Hans Scharoun, a great master of organic architecture in Germany. Hans Scharoun was brought up in Bremerhaven, an important harbor city in Germany. And due to his origin, ships became the predominant metaphor for his architectural thinking, like you can easily see on this picture. In 1964, he won the competition for his largest project and his last project, the State Library in Berlin. This is this building, the bigger building in the background. He never saw the building completed since he died earlier than its completion. Because of the deck-like terraces in the lower part and the big steamboat chimney on top, which serves as a magazine, this building is called the Bookship here in Berlin. It opens up to the west, where the architect Scharoun already realized the Berlin Philharmonie, great concert hall of our city, and where Mies van der Rohe previously completed the gallery of the 20th century. The building had a clear backside where the extension of a highway was planned. And until today, next picture, this cultural forum we saw on the competition model so far is seen as a very critical urban project. Before the Second World War, this area was densely built. That can be seen on this picture, and the red frame marks the later position of the library. Demolition in the Second World War made this area a vast place in the center of the city, a place that many different visions were occurred by architects and urban planners. Vastness is always a good start for visions, let's say. The post-war planners break the traditional city structure consisting of blocks, streets, and squares. And Hans Scharoun proposed an open landscape-like space consisting of big solitaires, like said before, and like seen in the model, the Philharmonie, the National Library, and the State Library. And now we make the jump. We look after the wall came down, the Berlin Wall. The city structure to the east of the library was redesigned by architect Renzo Piano in a dense and compact way. So the position of the library in the city completely changed. He proposed a casino in a kind of back-to-back position to the library. And this new arrangement he already thought about how to orientate the library towards his rebuilt new district to the east. That's why he built the most serial gateway in Berlin. Once you come to Berlin, you can see that. And you can see that on the right-hand side, a gateway to the backside of a big building. And once you pass this gateway, you find yourself in a quite desperate back street between two gigantic buildings. But once you turn your head southward in direction of an artificial lake, this back street definitely offers some potential. And that's why we redefined in the competition this outdoor space along the east side of the library. Here's a sketch. Here's a very simple drawing showing that the sun is entering into this back street situation. And that's the winning scheme of our competition, which proposes reading terraces that activate the east side by connecting them with an attractive water feature in the south. So far, the east wing of the library was used for office functions. We propose to locate new functions there, like cafeteria, like workshops along this side in order to profit from the new reading terraces. And the major intention of our competition proposal was to use the ground floor of the library as a kind of passageway between east and west, and then connecting the new reading terraces, I showed you before, with the existing reading garden on the other side. When the building was opened in 1978, the ground floor contained the hand catalog, which is nowadays removed due to digital research systems. This provides us with an opportunity to integrate new functions like bookshops, exhibition, coffee bars, and additional workshops. This plan provides an overview of the new and adjusted public function in the State Library of Berlin. And the next plan shows the upper floor, where we established additional workplaces, additional meeting rooms, places for public use instead of internal library use. And once you start thinking about outdoor spaces, you discover lots of them around and within the building, and you immediately start as an architect to think how to improve their quality. Within the State Library, you find, for example, courtyards without any use so far. Even worse, they are obviously completely neglected by the librarians. And the bookship has multiple decks on different floors. This is the main deck marked in red in front of this beautiful reading room. But these decks were never used from the beginning on. They seem to be completely neglected, as I said before. I think that this ship-loving architect, Hans Scharoun, must have thought about reading on those decks, but reality couldn't be more different, as you can see on this picture. And once we talk about this library and its outdoor spaces, we should definitely have a look to the cityscape within the Cultural Forum. A 6-lane road is cutting the library on the right-hand side from the rest of the Cultural Forum. So people are never animated to stroll around and to perceive this space as a cultural space. The aerial photo shows the planned future of the Cultural Forum, where the extension of the National Library by Herzog de Meuron, this is this square, this rectangular building, is already included. Some months ago, I was asked by a newspaper here in Berlin to make proposals for the improvement of the cultural forum. And the idea was to slow down the traffic of this 6-lane road in order to create a shared space. Entrances would be related to each other, green spaces which link the big buildings. Fragmented urban space could then grow together, and the dominance of car traffic of the last century might be substituted by trams, bicycles, and pedestrian traffic. And so far, thank you very much. I hope you agree that library design matters, but their outdoor spaces matter as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stefan, for your presentation of this exciting project. It is a very big surprise for me that you discovered terraces and balconies in a building we all in Berlin we all know for so many years, and you discovered these outdoor spaces and the opportunities you see in these outdoor spaces. I have two questions. My first question, this is about outdoor spaces, and I want to go a little bit deeper in this topic. What is for you as an architect and in this project, what is the meaning of life between buildings? You talked about this, and this expression, life between buildings, comes from the Danish architect Jan Gehl. And it is, maybe it's interesting, what is the meaning for you of this expression, and what are the qualities and opportunities of public open spaces in general?
Yeah, thank you for this question. What should I say? I think that architects often tend to think in terms of buildings. In particular, those buildings, they were created by themselves. And the critique that Jan Gehl addresses is that they often forget the interaction of buildings and space between these architectural objects. I think that the Cultural Forum is one of the best examples worldwide to highlight this problem, because the buildings you see here are worldwide renowned as iconic buildings, which are located in a kind of public space which does not work at all. The reason for that is that there was never a greater plan designed for this Cultural Forum. And this is the case for many, many projects, not only in Berlin, but worldwide, that people tend to think in terms of architectural buildings, objects, rather than public spaces. And I think that the public spaces, actually, they are a mirror of the social, the historical, and also the economic development of our society, and that changes over the time. Traffic, for example, becomes more or less important, or whatever you mention. And therefore, we have to be critical and constantly rethinking and adjusting the meaning of public spaces whenever we think about them, whenever we plan them, and whenever we use them.
Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting. My second question, during the planning and designing process of this project, how important is, for you as an architect, how important is the interaction with the library staff, with the head librarian and the staff for you in this process of designing? Are there discussions with the library staff?
Yeah, there are continuous discussions. Nearly every day we discuss with them about the needs nowadays and the future needs of a library in the 21st century. And I think that, that architectural projects are successful whenever they are a result of a fruitful dialogue between architects and users. This is the precondition. Communication is the precondition for successful architecture, because architecture is not simply a kind of art. It's art in a social context, and therefore communication and dialogue is the precondition for success.
Yes, this is a very good motto for every successful library project, I think. So thanks again, Stefan, for your presentation. And please close your screen view now. And then, thank you. And then now I hand over to Marina Stankovic and her project far away from Berlin in Southeast Asia, in Laos. It's your turn, Marina.
Okay. Hello, I'm Marina Stankovic. I'm happy to be here and be invited to this very special discussion and little presentation. Thank you for the invitation. Yes, I will maybe quickly introduce myself. I actually didn't make this part of the presentation, but I'm a Canadian citizen living in Berlin since a long time and running my practice here. We have a relatively small office. What we design with passion. We're not a commercial office. It's about passion. And therefore working with our clients and discovering and treating architecture as as a social experiment and giving it form is what we like to do on a one-to-one basis or as a team actually with our clients. And this is what we believe in as architects. So we're a very different structure than maybe Stefan's office. And also maybe just to introduce the project, it's a very different project than the one that you have seen. It's not only in an urban context, in a different, completely different condition, but also on the other side of the world. So I will try to share my screen, just a moment. Let's see here. So can you see the screen already?
Yes.
Very good.
We do.
So let's see here. Perfect.
Yes, great.
So what I will be speaking about is a university campus, which is located in Laos. I hope everybody knows where Laos is located. It's actually the only landlocked country in Southeast Asia. It's actually very mountainous and has treasures in terms of natural landscapes. It used to be French colonial colony. And in the 70s, it was taken over by the Pathet Lao communist group. And it retained its strong Francophone tradition over the years up to today. And of course, as you can see from the image, it is a tropical climate and it's influenced by strong rains and the monsoon pattern. The other difference to other Southeast Asian countries is that it's actually one of the poorest countries in the world, and that subsistence agriculture gives work to 80% of the population and accounts for 50% of the GDP of the country. The project is a development project. It's an urban development project. It's financed by the Asian Development Bank. There are, of course, goals from the UNDP. The idea is, of course, to reduce poverty, to bring education, deal with the gender inequality in the region, which is very strong, bring, a health system, clean waters, contribute to economic development. It's actually, almost fulfilling most of the UNDP goals for a sustainable future. In the region, the future is rural. So our challenge for this project was how to construct or how to downscale the idea of a university campus to the means that are possible locally, and how to bring education to a rural region. In the image to the left, you see that the small town of Savannakhet is located directly on the Mekong River. In the background, you see lots of green. The green areas are actually, the dark green are actually primordial forest, where the disappearing very quickly. Primarily through the light green areas, which are used for agriculture. So our site is actually having the shape that you can see to the right in light green. And so we are actually using one of these disappearing forests to occupy it for this campus. So the idea is actually to use to use the site in such a way that we stop further development and take away even more of the forest away. So we have created 3 zones in the forest and used the location of the campus to actually create areas that get reforested. And the chance at the same time is, of course, to create an architecture which is dealing with this very special condition of being in the forest and create a bioclimatic architecture for this region. This is what we found when we actually visited. We found out that the forest was gone, sold to neighboring countries that are very interested in the wood. In the precious woods, a few of the trees that are less precious were left over. These trees are huge. They are up to 40 meters high. They are amazing. You can fall in love with these giant trees because I had never seen anything like this in my whole life. But the scale of what is left of the primordial forest is just amazing. So our idea was to create a campus in this green forest that would locate itself underneath the trees, so it would never raise above the trees and the bushes that would also have to be reforested, and to create a connected campus that doesn't occupy the whole site, but is actually only having a very small, dense imprint on the site. And that would offer a connection between all the buildings on the site, covered connections, so that you could transit from one building to the other during heavy monsoons. But also, as you can see on the sketch to the right, create a series of enclosed and open spaces. The climate is generally very gentle and actually very nice. The aggressiveness of the climate is actually the rain, so that a lot of the outdoor spaces can be used also for teaching. The little drawing before shows the pathways between the buildings and how the campus is connected. So this is the kind of atmosphere that we're looking to create: covered walkways that offer easy connections and covered connections between the buildings, outdoor spaces where you can meet with other students, read, study, but also then go to the buildings. As you can see in this axonometric drawing, you see that the library building, which is the building with the curve to the right in the axonometric, is actually respecting one of these very large trees, and the shape is generated, the form is generated by the position of the tree itself. It is also at the front of the university, so it marks the entrance to the university in connection to the open space in front of the building. The paving is kind of blending into the landscape. It doesn't have strong edges, so that an amorphous open area can be thought of as an extension of the library space, but also an arrival point to the campus itself. In the little axonometric, black and white axonometric, you kind of see the paved main axis of the building, the roofs connecting the buildings, the academic infrastructures, and the different faculty buildings. We'll go to the next area. This is a close-up of the green area, so that one can see how the buildings blend with the landscape and create little gardens, orchards between the buildings. These gardens will very quickly become very luscious because the nature is very beautifully aggressive there. You can see the library is the curved building on the top, and marks the entrance to the campus. Again, you see that a lot of these buildings are trying to work with buffer areas between inside and outside. For example, the pink areas are open areas within the buildings themselves, and in order to allow the wind to come through the buildings and air the buildings. So we're trying to deal with passive methods of creating a good climate for these buildings. So the bioclimatic aspects I can show in these three sketches. The idea is to create a building which is sensitive to its climatic context. We do this by thinking about energy efficiency, by using landscape, allowing shading in front of the buildings, or the general orientation of buildings. We try to think about the porosity of the buildings to allow wind to come through the building, through the open spaces within the buildings. We work with deep facades that offer shading. So they're also acting as buffering spaces between inside and outside. And we're introducing greening within the buildings, like biophilic design within the space indoors. And of course, a university of this size, it's for about 3,000 students with 6 different faculties. We do have technical spaces, so we have tried to reduce the amount of air-conditioned buildings and actually simplified the other buildings. So it's always a question of dealing of a good balance between high-tech and low-tech buildings. This is the library building seen from the walkway, from the general axis. In the section below, you can see that the library is located actually on the top floors of the entrance building. And we use the first 2 floors to actually provide lecture halls, computer rooms, and generally open spaces for students to meet. We will look at this in the next floor plans coming up. So that the library building is combined with other usages, almost like a learning, a student center, or actually including all the other academic infrastructure buildings shared by the whole university. Here you can see that the volume of the building on the top floor where the library is located has avoided areas, so a great hall for the library space. And in turn, the library space is connected to the student lobby to the right of the building. If we look at this building, we will see that the bottom 2 floors that contain, you know, a cafeteria, computer rooms, a lecture hall, and a student meeting hall, all lead up to the library, connected by a ramp which is located around the curved facade, so that actually the ramp gives you an architectural promenade all the way up to the library area, offering views to the outside, but also to the exterior spaces that can be found within the building. Sorry, so what you can see in this floor plan is actually the library space, which has a void above. And within these deep facades, we have accommodated working areas that are slightly more separated from the office, from the rest of the library space. And on the top floor, we have special working areas for rooms that students can book to work together, or conference spaces. And then, of course, storage spaces for the library stacks. In the lower spaces, as I said, we have tried to create a community feeling in this building. So we have created cafeterias, lecture halls, and in the triangle in the top part of the building, this voided big hall, which is the student lobby space. Working in these countries, you have to also think about the building technology that is available locally. This is actually a very simple structure, spans of 5 meters, concrete constructions with teeny columns, not the normal norms that we have here in Germany or in the rest of Europe. So we have applied this system to create the design of all the buildings, and we have infilled the structural, the structure with local bricks. Local bricks, they have actually quite a bit of ways of, and special bricks that they make in this area. They look different and are very rough, but quite nice. So we're reusing them. And in this facade, you see the ramp starting from the left of the building, going to the first floor, and then continuing within the building to reach the library on the top floors. In terms of materials, the materials are very simple. We have concrete, infilled brick, and a little bit of history from Mediterranean history brought to Laos by the French with the usage of the terrazzo flooring. So this is kind of a view from this open area, from the arrival area onto the library. And then this is the view from the student lobby, this voided area, which is completely outdoors. This is one of the porous spaces of the buildings, which is open to all the students, to the usage, and through the verticality, you have a relationship to other spaces, in this case, the library on the top floor. So this is a very quick review about this project. I'm happy to take any questions that Klaus or other
Yeah.
people might have.
Thank you very much, Marina, for your presentation of this, I think, very promising project in Laos, in Southeast Asia. Yes, I have a question. You told us about your outdoor spaces and how you integrate this building in the surrounding, in this forest area. So we all could see that for you the outdoor spaces are more than a library garden or something like this. My question is going a little bit deeper. And it's about sustainability. You mentioned the UN sustainability goals. So sustainability in library design is both. It is a global trend as well as a topic that IFLA, our library organization, has treated in various occasions. Could outdoor space be seen as an aspect of green library design? Do you think this is something special, a green library design?
Yes, I do think that there's many chances to see it this way. I always think green architecture, green building is also very easily associated to greenwashing. So on the other hand, we should look deeper than just the title. And so then we have to look at actually what is it that we're doing with the space and how are we creating, for example, if we talk about biophilic design, how are we bringing greenery into the building to create well-being? The library is possibly the only unconditional public space that we still have in our society. It is obvious that we want to have, we want to spend time in these spaces and we want to create a feeling of well-being. This can, you know, the green is not only good for the health, it's depending on the plants, it can clean the air, purify the air. It creates that kind of idyllic relationship to a landscape in miniature that we might have indoor. On the other hand, the sustainability aspect, when you think about the architecture, the building, the spaces, the in-between spaces that, like in this extreme climate, mitigate the temperatures, the high temperatures, the heat. This is actually essential to work with green spaces, outdoor spaces, spaces that are both inside and outside for these types of climatic regions.
Yeah.
And I think this is a chance also for us to think about introducing, being more and more aware about this lost balance with nature that we so much so miss in this, especially in this COVID period.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Marina. Thank you very much. And I like the expression well-being. This focusing on well-being in libraries very, very much. It's very crucial, I think, for library design that the users they feel well in this space. So thanks again. And now I would like to hand over to Karen Latimer, and she will summarize some questions from the chat. And I think she has a question by herself.
Yes, thank you very much, Klaus, and thank you, Stefan and Marina. That was fantastic. Two very different projects, but with common themes running through them, really, with this indoor-outdoor connectivity and the well-being. I've tried to group the questions into sort of three lots, and I'm going to start with a number of people have talked about the outdoor spaces, and some of the questions are around, and they're probably coming from people who live in countries like the one I live in, You know, how do you draw people out to these outdoor spaces when you're not living in a climate? And perhaps more specifically, probably for you, Marina, how do you cope with the wet season in the Laos project? So the question really is how do you cope with different climates, and how do you encourage? We all think, yes, it's lovely to use these spaces, but you don't want them to look, Stefan, like those terraces in the Sharon building before you started. You know, we've all got those sad courtyards, I fear, around our gardens. So I don't know which of you, maybe if you want to go first, Marina, and then Stefan, just to comment on how you cope with different climates and how you draw people out to these spaces.
Well, should I start?
Yes, Marina.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all, where we come from, we have a little bit more rain and snow. So we long for those warm climates because we can do so many more things outside than maybe we can do here. But actually, I do think that architecture can create the invitation by giving opportunities to meet outdoors for maybe even sheltered spaces to meet outdoors. So I think it seems like such an easy answer with the Laos project and more difficult with Stefan's project because we just have a very different climatic situation. So it's kind of unfair, I feel, for Stefan.
See how he handles it then.
But also he's trying to create an invitation, an opportunity for people to use the space, to want to gather outdoors. And so I think that is the incentive that we as architects can give in order for the public to use.
So let me hand it over to
space.
Stefan then, Marina.
Yeah.
Let me hand it over to Stefan to see how he's
Sure.
going to draw people out into the Berlin outdoors.
Yeah, I fear that this question will come to me after a while. Of course, the State Library is a scientific library. They have very valuable books here. If you think about the treasures of this library, not to mention the, let's say, the autograph of the Ninth Symphony of Ludwig van Beethoven is there. Of course, you cannot take out a book on a terrace because the librarians, they will hate us as architects if we suggest such stupid things. But the terraces are there. And I think that our control systems are becoming more and more easy to handle. So why can't you leave a book in the library, on the desk, in the reading room, and then go out for a break and you find some deck chairs and you drink a coffee and you enjoy the view over the city. I think this is at least something we could offer to the people. And to come back to Hans Scharoun, why did he do these terraces? I mean, this is an interesting question. He thought the other way around. He thought that the science affiliated people would like to go up to these terraces by public stairs and have a look into the library, though they cannot enter the library from the decks, but that produces a certain attraction and interest. And this could be the other way around. So in both directions, outdoor spaces can work as spaces which are, let's say, out of this valuable book reading rooms. That's of course not the solution.
Well, and in fact, you've answered another question, which was about the balance between security and openness.
Yeah.
You kind of touched on that. I'll stick with you, Stefan, but I'm going to ask this question to both of you, but starting with you. One of the questions we got was about, you in particular, Stefan, are working on an existing building, but Marina, obviously you're working on a current one. But the question from another architect is, how are you building in future-proofing to your current designs in the case of, COVID-19, none of us really predicted that. So how are you future-proofing your buildings for whatever is hovering on the horizon? Stefan, do you want to go first this time?
No, I leave this to Marina because I'm interested in her answer.
Oh, cheat. Right,
I-
Marina, how are you future-proofing your building?
I
Maybe I
think
get some inspiration.
we've talked about the porosity of the building. If the future is an infectious disease, then I think bringing, air exchange is a good idea if we follow the actual hygiene plans of our governments. So I think that gives plenty of opportunities and seems to be quite easy in this aspect. When we're dealing with outdoor space, with different climates, then certainly this becomes a greater challenge.
Yeah.
And especially for public buildings such as libraries. On the other hand, actually library buildings typologically are very big buildings. So we always have an incredible volume in the library building of air. And I think that's much easier than smaller cramped spaces.
Well, they always say librarians are very fleet of foot, so I guess we do try and future-proof and move with the times. Did you want to add anything to that, Stefan, before I ask?
No, that was a perfect answer.
Okay. Very cool. Well, I think we've probably time for about
Yeah, thank you.
I'll
Yes.
ask one more question and then we'll see
One
if
more.
we have time. That'll probably be it. And the final question then is the one that I was going to ask Klaus, but others have too. How did you find out what your potential users wanted, or did you engage with the users of the library, not the library staff, not the formal brief, if you like, but did either of you try to engage with your future users of the spaces in any way through workshops or surveys or anything? So again, Stefan, did you do any user engagement?
I must admit that this is a quite complex project. So the librarians are in constant exchange with the users.
Yeah.
And in this case, they gather their needs and their requirements or their future visions for the library. So what we are doing is to discuss continuously with the librarians, which is also not very easy. They have very different ideas. For example, some of them tell us the library will be different in the future in terms of the reduction of books, and the increasement of workplaces, common or public workplaces, individual situations for people who meet there and who want to work together. And others say, no, the book will always remain, and we have much more books in the future because such a big library has to collect books and has to purchase books every year, 100,000 for the State Library in Berlin. So it's already quite complex to talk to the librarians. They have different ideas, and nobody knows exactly what happens with the library in the future.
And slightly different, I guess, for you, Marina, because you're not dealing with a state national library, you're dealing with a university library, which probably does have. We want about a minute to go. Do you want a quick comment, Marina, before I hand back?
I'll just, yeah, I think very quickly, we have developed, especially in libraries, a method of actually starting to work with the client through workshops. And recently we have developed also a working method where we actually ask users through the media to respond to various questions so that we can start creating an idea of how to develop a project and giving an opportunity for users and librarians in this case to participate in the projects itself. In particular, because these are public projects, and public projects get built normally by cities, and librarians normally and users don't get a voice in this process. So I think it's very important to create a process where you include librarians and users.
Thank you. Thank you both. I'm now going to hand back to my wonderful colleague. So Klaus, over to you to wrap up here. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Karen, and thank you all for this inspiring talk and for the discussion. We have already reached the end of our webinar. So many thanks go to our wonderful panelists today, Marina and Stefan. Thank you very, very much. Thanks to Diane Cohen from McGill University in Montreal. She was our producer of this webinar and the last webinar too. And my thanks go to IFLA for the great support of our library organization. Please don't forget to check our website for the next events. And please stay with our webinar series. There is a third one coming. Don't forget it. Thank you all and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.